Die My Love is a psychological drama that follows Grace, played by Jennifer Lawrence. She and her long-term boyfriend Jackson, played by Robert Pattinson, move into a new home in the Montana countryside, where Grace plays the role of the stay-at-home mom. Her time at this house proves to be tedious and frustrating as she struggles with a deep emotional void and her needs remain unmet. So this is a character study that's playing with a few big topics here. The bigger one fueling much of what's happening is postpartum depression. This movie is a portrait of how intense and disorienting the hormone dip can be after having a child. Postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis are capable of affecting women in ways that you might not expect, and this movie is not shy of giving viewers an inside look at just how strange those symptoms can be. But there are other things going on here. This movie is also just about domestic life. It's about the reality of being a stay-at-home partner and being defined solely by your role in your relationship. How lacking any sort of recreation beyond your basic home life can be a recipe for a mundane life. Many of the periods of boredom that Grace is plagued with might be relatable to anyone that's ever felt trapped at home, but these can also be attributed to relationship fatigue. The movie digs into how bad relationships can get when one or both parties stops trying to put in effort. Grace and Jackson go from having sparks fly around them to living like roommates who simply tolerate each other, and Grace is very dissatisfied with that. The movie presents the big question, is the relationship worth salvaging, or should you just call it quits? But this is not a self-help film. It's not gonna help you determine that in your own relationship. There are obviously other issues impacting Grace and Jackson's relationship, so it's a bit more complicated, but it should serve as an example of a stale relationship, perhaps one we could all compare our relationships to. The movie has a little bit of surrealism. It shows us the things that Grace is longing for, even when they're not there, giving it a little bit of a fantastical spin. It's not all that fantastical though, since many of those elements are just very real, mundane things. Some surrealist films like to get pretty playful with the subject matter and metaphors, but this one keeps things pretty basic. For example, Grace keeps seeing a guy on a motorcycle, showing us how she's fueled by desire and really needs some excitement in her life. Some of the other aspects of the film are pretty bizarre though. Grace's behavior can range anywhere between mildly strange all the way to completely unsettling. The ways that she responds to Jackson being distant are sometimes understandable, even if they are a bit irrational, but on the more unsettling end, she can be pretty concerning. This feels like a good time to put a trigger warning on this movie for some harm done to animals. Grace is also just kind of quirky though, so the movie kind of blurs the line between her natural, playful mannerisms and her more unsettling proclivities. She is kind of silly, and that's what really redeems her for the viewers. She seems like someone who would be really likable if you had met her under normal circumstances. Sometimes when she's confrontational toward Jackson, her reasons are easy to stand by and you're 100% on her side. It gets a little bit hard to stand by her when she starts doing really embarrassing things, but nevertheless, you want her to make changes that will make her life better. Jennifer Lawrence gives a great performance. Again, she's really bizarre sometimes, but those innocent little quirks shouldn't be too strange if you've got dorky people in your life. So her fully committing to that was a much needed element of her character to make her a bit more interesting. It's also a very bold performance. There's a lot of nudity in this movie, so she really shows us that she's unashamed and comfortable. Robert Pattinson is definitely a supporting actor here. Jackson feels pretty distant in service of making their relationship feel as distant to us as it does for Grace. The movie is never shown from his point of view, and we don't really know much about him beyond the fact that he's Grace's partner who isn't paying any attention to her. He's the on-screen embodiment of partners who stop putting effort into their relationships. He's not a very likable character, since most of the time our POV character can't get anything out of him beyond the leftover bits of himself after a long day. There are times where Rob's performance is really outstanding here, which probably doesn't need much advocacy. At this point, Pattinson has given enough good post-Twilight performances that his reputation is starting to speak for itself. So the movie does a good job of shedding light on its complex topics, especially postpartum depression, but because of that, it's a pretty exhausting watch. The movie is extremely repetitive and aimless. It's totally fine for a character study to be aimless, as they pretty much all are. The problem is how repetitive it is on top of that. A movie can be aimless and still be entertaining, but when you get to the 30 or 40 minute mark and you realize that it's just not really switching angles, it just feels hopeless. There are times when small changes are made or small efforts are made on Jackson's part, but they're usually very brief, so we just keep reverting back to wishing their relationship would end. I know that's the whole point, to get us to understand this very real and unfortunate experience that some women go through, but it just doesn't really mold that into anything positive or productive. There's usually some sort of push-pull rhythm with subject matter that can be hard to watch, but this movie just sticks to the pushing, so it can get pretty exhausting. The first time I checked my watch to see how much left I had to endure, I was only halfway through the movie. I still had an entire hour left. And the falling actions were so tiresome. It felt like there were about 47 endings to this movie. Every time you think, okay, I think this is the note that it's gonna end on. I think it's about to cut to black. And then boom, another scene. And then again and again and again. Like, it felt like a joke, as if Lynn Ramsey couldn't decide on a single note to end the movie on, so she just included all of them. And again, the surrealist elements did not pick up the slack. They could have made the movie much more cerebral, but they were honestly pretty shallow. So I really wanted to like this movie. I really liked the ideas behind it, but unfortunately, these topics are sort of undermining each other. To tell a story about postpartum depression is an act of service, but that means a lot less when there are several other things affecting Grace, like her milquetoast boyfriend. At that point, it'll lead a lot of viewers to think that she's just being driven over the edge by her boyfriend and that there isn't this whole other very important thing driving the movie. And similarly, the ways that she has to navigate her relationship problems feels much less insightful or interesting when we see that there's something else going on. There's a whole good movie premise right there, how when you mix anxious and avoidant attachment styles in relationships, they're often very difficult, but then you throw in another external factor like postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis, and the initial ideas are much less recognizable. So the movie was not terrible, but it certainly tested my patience. It's got good ideas and good visuals, but there just wasn't enough there to make up for how tiresome it is. So if I'm being honest with myself, the good in this movie did not outshine the bad. I would call this one a bit lacking. It has its insights and good performances, but it's a total slog. This one is for the critics and cinephiles, if at all. For viewers who can tolerate a sluggish film by fixating on its message or symbolic elements, there might be something for you here. But for casual viewers who might be expecting an interesting love story between Katniss and Edward, I gotta say that this is probably not the movie you're expecting. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really helps this channel grow. I will see you later this week with my review of The Running Man.